Good evening. This is Forum Daily for Wednesday, January 4th. I'm Nathaniel Dewick, filling in for Nima Rajan. We begin tonight with a funeral for an Ontario police officer who was killed in an ambush attack last week. Hundreds of officers from across the province joined the family of Constable Pierzchala for the ceremony in his hometown of Barrie. Police have said the officer was killed after he responded to a call about a vehicle in a ditch west of Hagersville, Ontario on December 27th. 2 people have been charged with first-degree murder in his death. Constable Pierzchala had been with the OPP for just over a year, and only hours before his death, he was notified that he had passed his 10-month probation period. Continental travel chaos over the holidays has resulted in roughly 1,500 check bags still unclaimed and sitting at the Vancouver International Airport. Hundreds of flights were cancelled in and out of the airport before Christmas as heavy snow and freezing rain covered the usually temperate Metro Vancouver. Hundreds of passengers were also left in limbo in Mexico after Sunwing cancelled their flights. A dad from Moose Jaw says his daughter has cried enough to water all the fields in Saskatchewan after her destination wedding in Mexico was upended by Sunwing's suspension of flights from Saskatoon and Regina. The airline now says it has completed all its scheduled recovery flights home. Meanwhile, the House of Commons Transport Committee wants to unpack the travel nightmare that plagued thousands of Canadian air and rail passengers over the holidays. Chairman Peter Schiefke says Canadians deserve answers for what he calls unacceptable delays and cancellations sparked by some severe winter weather. Mr. Schiefke plans to ask representatives from Sunwing Airlines and Via Rail to appear as witnesses. The CEO of the BC Real Estate Association says a new 3-day wait period for buyers after they agree to purchase a home will have no impact on the current market. Trevor Coots says the market is much cooler than when the idea was first announced in 2021. And buyers are able to put conditions, like inspections, in their contracts. BC is the first province in Canada to implement a mandatory wait period. The government is promoting it as a way to give purchasers more time to arrange financing or home inspections. Finance Minister Katrine Conroy says in a statement that the measures will protect buyers and strengthen public confidence in the real estate market. Police in Edmonton say 2023 has gotten off to an exceptionally violent start. They say from Friday to Tuesday, they responded to 4 suspicious deaths, 3 non-lethal shootings, as well as numerous weapons complaints involving knives and bear spray. Police say there were 21 reported shootings in Edmonton in December, compared to 7 in December of 2021. Sergeant Aubrey Zalaski says resources are stretched thin, and the department's homicide section has recently needed to lean on other investigative areas to keep pace. Nova Scotia says it has hired 65 new healthcare workers following a recent recruitment trip to Kenya. Health Minister Michelle Thompson says the province led the trip to a refugee camp alongside the United Nations High Commission for Refugees, refugee-focused charities, and others. The province says the effort was conducted through the Federal Economic Mobility Pathways Pilot. It identifies refugees with much-needed skills who meet regional and provincial immigration requirements. It's not clear when the 65 new continuing care assistants will begin working in Nova Scotia. New research suggests that half of Canadian workers plan to look for a new job in 2023. About 50% of respondents to a survey by the recruitment firm Robert Half say they plan to search for a new job in the next 6 months. Participants' top reasons for searching for a new job included a higher salary, better benefits, more advancement opportunities, and greater flexibility to choose when and where they work. Well, staff at a ski resort in BC are working, and they have begun manually chipping ice off a ski lift after it was completely encased in back-to-back storms over the Christmas holiday. Photos posted online by Big White Ski Resort in the Okanagan show the seats, ropes, tower, and terminals of the Falcon Chair completely white with a thick shell of snow and ice. The resort says temperatures fluctuated from -30 to above 0 in a period of 48 hours, and the snow that fell during the last days of 2022 was more wet than normal. Canada is marking its first National Ribbon Skirt Day. The event is inspired by a young girl who was shamed for wearing one to school several years ago. Isabel Kulak wore a ribbon skirt to her rural Saskatchewan school in December 2020 when she was 10 years old. Her family said at the time that a staff member told Ms. Kulak the outfit wasn't considered formal enough. Manitoba Senator Mary Jane McCallum's bill to recognize the day every January 4th passed in Parliament last year. A statement from the Prime Minister says January 4th is an opportunity to learn more about and to celebrate Indigenous cultures, traditions, histories, and contributions. Forum Daily will be back after the break with a look at Canada's CANDU nuclear technology and a clean energy tax credit. Conversation with Dr. Chris Kiefer, president of Canadians for Nuclear Energy, up next. And after that, news from around the United States and from around the world. So stay tuned. Forum Daily will be right back after a short break. The federal government is proposing a new tax credit aimed at helping businesses address eligible equipment capital costs in their transition to clean energy. The 2022 Fall Economic Statement proposed the 30% Clean Technology Investment Tax Credit, partly as a response to the U.S. Inflation Reduction Act, which offers incentives to the clean energy industry. The tax credit is applied to the capital costs of eligible equipment used to generate and store electricity, including solar, wind, water, and nuclear. But one advocate says the tax credit does not go far enough with regard to nuclear energy. Dr. Chris Kiefer, president of Canadians for Nuclear Energy, has started a petition aimed at getting CANDU nuclear technology included in the tax credit. But with us today to discuss this is Dr. Chris Kiefer himself. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thank you for having me back.
Our pleasure. So let's start with this petition itself, E4201. What led you to start to launch this?
We launched it just before Christmas. And, the issue here is that, our entire existing nuclear industry is a CANDU nuclear industry. It's good that this investment tax credit includes SMRs, but at the present moment, we have no SMRs. So nuclear is effectively cut out. And that's a big loss because CANDU is delivering big on climate change, on clean air, and on medical isotopes. So it's a serious problem that our nuclear sector and CANDU nuclear in particular is being disadvantaged. The other issue is that the technologies that are being rewarded here all have supply chains that are almost exclusively overseas. So this is a blow as well to the Canadian economy and to Canadian workers.
It's interesting. Yeah, I was reading through the tax credit, and it did include the small modular nuclear reactors. So I suppose technology-wise, how is CANDU technology different from SMRs?
So, we have a made in Canada solution with the CANDU. It was developed here. We have, we're a tier one nuclear nation, but we don't have, for instance, uranium enrichment capacities or heavy forging capacities. So our, engineers ingeniously developed a design that got past all that, which again means that the supply chain is 100% here in Canada. And I think that's a real key difference between the CANDUs and the SMRs. Every dollar that we spend on CANDU technology is recycled in the Canadian economy. So we get $1.40 back in GDP activity. And that GDP activity is basically Canadians getting high quality, high paying jobs, middle class jobs. So that's a very good thing. The other thing is that our CANDU supply chain is based upon locally sourced uranium fuel. And as we're seeing with the geopolitical upheaval of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it's a little bit dangerous to put your eggs in the basket of another economy. Right now, most wind and solar technology is sourced from China. And who knows what goes on if China invades Taiwan. So we have a really unique opportunity with the CANDU reactor that unfortunately is being left out with this move by the government.
Broader picture here, nuclear energy, we're a country that has a variety of different energy sources. So what's the overall significance of nuclear energy in Canada, given our number of other supplies?
Listen, there's a consensus that we need to double or even triple our electricity grid. And that is a mind-boggling amount of generation infrastructure that we need to bring online. Right now, Canada gets most of its electricity from hydro. But as you probably know, most of the sweet spots have been taken, and that's largely tapped out. Wind and solar lead to very expensive electricity and incomplete decarbonization because when the weather doesn't cooperate or the sun goes down, we end up running fossil fuel plants, mostly natural gas plants. So that leaves nuclear, which we know works. We built 23 nuclear reactors, commissioned them in just 22 years. And those reactors currently supply 15% of Canada's electricity, and they do so with almost zero carbon emissions. So the future potential here is huge. We have deployed them rapidly in the past, and we can do it again in the future.
A minute left here, but a consistent criticism of nuclear energy is that plants take too long to build. They're too expensive in the long term, given our transition. So is CANDU technology worth including in the tax credit, given those concerns?
Listen, nuclear has provided a great return on our investment. In Ontario, where we have most of our reactors, it's the second cheapest form of electricity after hydro. You're right that big infrastructure projects in the West have been a challenge, and that's things like not only nuclear plants, but hydro dams, airports, bridges, etc. This was a challenge that our ancestors faced, but they didn't throw their hands up in the air. They got down, they got to work, and they provided us with the infrastructure that we're sort of free riding on today. And it's really our devotion now to our children that should lead us to taking on these big challenges. The key thing we have here is a large investment that we've made in renewing our CANDU fleet. It's called refurbishment. It gets them to an as new condition and gives us another 40 years of operation out of our CANDUs. That investment isn't just in the physical infrastructure, it's in the project management. It's in the high skills workforce that we've trained specifically to CANDU. And so we're in a position better than almost any other country in the West to take advantage of that.
U.S. President Joe Biden says Republicans' inability to unify behind a candidate for House Speaker is not a good look for the country. Members of the House continued voting today after Kevin McCarthy failed to win the required majority on 3 ballots yesterday and 3 today, after which the House adjourned. It's the first time in a century that a speaker hasn't been selected on the first ballot. Former President Donald Trump is urging House Republicans to, in his words, close the deal, take the victory. Mr. Biden says he hopes Republicans can get their act together. Poland's defense minister has signed a deal to buy a second batch of U.S. Abrams main battle tanks. It comes as Warsaw beefs up its defensive capabilities and strengthens military cooperation with Washington in light of Russia's war in neighboring Ukraine. Poland is the first U.S. ally in Europe to procure Abrams tanks. The $1.4 billion deal signed Wednesday foresees the delivery of 116 M1A1 Abrams tanks with related equipment and logistics beginning this year. This follows last year's agreement for the acquisition of 250 of the upgraded M1A2 Abrams that will be delivered in 2025 to 2026. Southwest Airlines is trying to repair its relationship with travelers who got stuck by canceled flights over the holidays. Yesterday, Southwest told affected travelers that they will get 25,000 frequent flyer points, which are worth more than $300 in tickets. Southwest is including the offer in a letter from CEO Bob Jordan, in which the executive is again apologizing for the airline's performance. Problems began with a winter storm and spiraled out of control when Southwest crew scheduling software failed. U.S. job openings slipped in November but remained at high, suggesting businesses are still determined to add workers. It's a blow to the Federal Reserve's efforts to cool hiring and wage gains. The Labor Department said Wednesday that there were 10.46 million job vacancies on the last day of November. This is down slightly from the 10.51 million in October, which is a decline from peak 11.9 million in March. Yet the figures show there are nearly 1.8 jobs for every unemployed person, down from a peak of 2, but historically very high. Before the pandemic, there were usually more unemployed people than jobs. Salesforce is laying off about 10% of its workforce in the latest round of job cuts in the tech industry, as corporations cut back on software and other spending. The San Francisco cloud computing software company will also be closing some offices. Salesforce employs nearly 80,000 people. Tech companies hired aggressively during the pandemic to keep up with soaring demand, but Salesforce had been growing rapidly since at least 2018. Its workforce more than doubled between then and 2021. New York has announced a $100 million settlement with Coinbase. Settlement is over what the state officials have called a significant failure in the cryptocurrency's trading platform systems for spotting potential criminal activity. Under the terms of the settlement announced Wednesday, Coinbase will pay $50 million to New York State and will invest another $50 million in its compliance program. Well, tech companies of all sizes are in Las Vegas to show off their latest products at CES, formerly known as the Consumer Electronics Show. The show is getting back to normal after going virtual in 2021 and experiencing a significant drop in 2022 attendance because of the pandemic. Exhibitors range from big names like Sony and LG to tiny startups. You might see the next big thing or something that will never make it past the prototype stage. Highlights of a media preview included an AI-connected bird feeder, electric inline skates, and temporary digital tattoos. The mastermind of the U.S. college admissions bribery scandal has been sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. Rick Singer's punishment is the longest sentence handed down in the sprawling scandal that exploded onto newspaper headlines in 2019. Mr. Singer pleaded guilty nearly 4 years ago to paying off entrance exam administrators and coaches to get often undeserving students into elite schools with inflated test scores and bogus athletic credentials. Well, local authorities say there was no foul play in the snowplow mishap that injured actor Jeremy Renner. The 51-year-old Avengers star was seriously hurt when he was run over by his own tractor after using it to free a vehicle driven by a family member. The sheriff in Reno, Nevada, says this appears to have been a tragic accident. Meanwhile, Mr. Renner has posted an Instagram photo of himself in a hospital bed, writing, quote, "I'm too messed up now to type, but I send love to you all." A representative for Damar Hamlin says the football player's recovery is moving in a positive direction. Jordan Rooney says Hamlin's family and friends remain optimistic, but he's not providing any more details. The 24-year-old Buffalo Bills safety collapsed and went into cardiac arrest during a game against Cincinnati on Monday night. The Bills said yesterday that Hamlin was under sedation and listed in critical condition. Well, Forum Daily will be right back. After the break, we're going to be taking a look at the major news stories and headlines from around the world. So stay tuned. Forum Daily will be right back right here. Stay tuned. The head of the World Health Organization says the agency is concerned about the risk to life in China as COVID-19 spreads across the country. Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says he understands why numerous countries have recently taken measures against travelers coming from China. Earlier this week, Chinese officials sharply criticized COVID-19 testing requirements imposed on visitors from China and threatened countermeasures against countries involved. These include Canada, the US, and several European countries. Russia says unauthorized use of cell phones by its soldiers led to a deadly Ukrainian rocket attack on the facility where they were housed. The military has also raised the death toll from the weekend attack to 89. That makes it one of the deadliest strikes on the Kremlin's forces since the start of the war 10 months ago. British intelligence officials say Moscow's unprofessional military practices were likely partly to blame for the high casualty rate. The Czech government has approved a bill aimed at bringing defense spending at the required NATO goal of 2% of gross domestic product as Russia's war in Ukraine continues. Although the Czechs will spend only 1.52% of GDP on defense this year, the 2% target could be reached by 2024 once the bill receives parliamentary approval. NATO members agreed in 2014 to commit to the 2% spending target by 2024. Currently, only 9 of the Western military alliance's 30 members meet or surpass that goal. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, in his first major speech of 2023, has pledged to cut inflation by half, grow the UK economy, and stop illegal immigration. In a speech setting out the Conservative government's priorities for the year ahead, Mr. Sunak focused on tackling the UK's slowing economy and made promises to reduce national debt. He also vowed Wednesday to pass new laws to stop migrants from arriving on UK shores in small boats, as well as cut massive backlogs in the UK Public Health Service. Authorities in Pakistan have ordered shopping malls and markets to close by 8:30 p.m. as part of a new energy conservation plan aimed at easing Pakistan's economic crisis. Authorities also ordered wedding halls and restaurants to shut at 10 p.m. The move Wednesday comes amid talks with the International Monetary Fund. The government expects the measures to save energy and curtail the costs of imported oil, for which Pakistan spends $3 billion annually. Police in Somalia say 2 suicide car bombers killed at least 10 people early Wednesday. This when they targeted a military facility in a region at the heart of the government's offensive against al-Shabaab extremists. Al-Shabaab claimed responsibility for the attack. The al-Qaeda-linked group has controlled parts of central and southern Somalia for years. The government has vowed to defeat it this year. Iran has reportedly released a prominent actress nearly 3 weeks after she was jailed for criticizing a crackdown on anti-government protests. The country's semi-official ISNA news agency says Taraneh Al-Adusti has been released on bail. Ms. Al-Adusti was among several Iranian celebrities to express support for the countrywide protests and criticize the authorities' violent clampdown on dissent. Twitter says it will relax its 3-year-old ban on political advertising. It's the latest change by owner Elon Musk as he tries to pump up Twitter's revenue after purchasing the social media platform last year. Twitter banned all political advertising in 2019 as it reacted to growing concern about misinformation spreading on social media. In reversing the ban, the company says it will align its advertising policy with those of TV and other media outlets. Regulators in the European Union have hit Facebook's parent company with massive fines for privacy violations. They've also banned the company Meta from forcing users in the EU to agree to personalize ads based on their online activity. Ireland's Data Protection Commission imposed 2 fines totaling €390 million, about $414 million US. The company says it will appeal. Pope Francis has praised his predecessor's acute and gentle thought. His comments come on the final day of viewing of the body of Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI for his funeral on Thursday. The retired German pontiff, who died Saturday at 95, has been lying in state since Monday at St. Peter's Basilica. While the NFL and its fans are rallying in support of Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin. The 24-year-old remains in critical condition at a hospital in Cincinnati, going into cardiac arrest on the field. Players and coaches from around the league were overcome with emotion while watching Hamlin be resuscitated Monday night. A toy drive he started with the goal of raising $2,500 has now brought in more than $6 million. How about that? I'm Nathaniel Duick, filling in for Nima Rajan, and that'll do it for your look at national and international news for today. For more news, visit our website or visit our social media accounts. We'll be sure to see you all later, and thank you for watching us today. Take care.